Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and I'm thrilled that you could join us for a little poetry today. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box, where we have been lucky enough to work with over 200 wonderful poets from all over the United States. Part of our commitment to our authors is to help them reach a larger audience through our Zoom shows, and today we're very excited to celebrate four amazing poets. Laura Ann Reed is joining us from Washington State. Rick Rayburn will be joining us from California. Patricia Cannon is also joining us from California. And Celeste Colasurdo will be sharing poems on behalf of her sister, Christine, from here in Oregon. So let's get started with our first featured poet. Laura Ann Reed is the author of Homage to Kafka, a thought-provoking collection of poems inspired by Franz Kafka and in conversation with artwork by Paul Klee. Laura Ann was born in Berkeley, California, earned her bachelor's from UC Berkeley, which included a year at l'Université Aux-Marseille in France, and lived most of her life in the Bay Area before relocating to the Pacific Northwest with her husband, Grant, in 2004. She earned a master's degree in the performing arts and taught dance at the University of California before also earning a master's degree in clinical psychology. Her work has been published in 7 anthologies, including Poetry of Presence Volume 2, and has appeared in a large number of journals in the United States, Great Britain, and Ireland. She is also a contributing editor with the Montréal Review. It's my pleasure to welcome Laura Ann Reed.
Thank you for that introduction, Shawn. I appreciate that. And thank you also for organizing and hosting this event. I want to extend my appreciation to all the members of the audience for your presence and your support of the authors whose work you'll be hearing today, because without you, there would not be an event. So thank you very much for coming, all of you. As Shawn mentioned, my chapbook that I'll be reading from, Homage to Kafka, came out in 2025. 2024 was the centennial anniversary of Kafka's death. There was an overwhelming flood of articles and critical essays that came out that year discussing different aspects of Kafka's continued influence on the literary world. Literature has undergone many transformations through the ages, but few, if any, writers have cast such a long shadow over existentialism and modernism as has Franz Kafka. I had previously read Kafka's 2 major novels, The Trial and The Castle, many decades ago, as well as several of his short stories. But in reading the critical essays that came out last year, I became inspired to delve more deeply into the whole body of Kafka's work, including his diaries, his aphorisms, and his correspondence. In the course of this immersion in Kafka's writing, I found his themes of alienation and absurdity to be echoing my own feelings of disconnect and disjunction in our increasingly technocratic world. In fact, so much of Kafka's work was prescient. 101 years after his death, his reflections on bureaucratic injustice and malevolence and the powerlessness of the individual speak out of his time directly into our own, in a voice that is at the same time urgent and irrefutable. Kafka's literary concerns were the concerns of the modernist writers who grappled with issues of moral, cultural, and spiritual redemption. Because I needed a language in which to address these concerns, I chose to write this chapbook using certain modernist poetic strategies rather than with the prosaic diction and syntax associated with much of postmodernist, confessional, and discursive poetry. So if the music of my poems sounds strange in your ears or even unsettling, it's because my attempt in writing them was to speak to the strangeness and the disquiet in Kafka's world, with all of its undercurrents of uncertainty and anxiety. The first poem I'll be reading to you is called Petition. Stepping into the hidden world implicit in this one, requiring only a slight shift of what is, the disposition of the realm, benign or iniquitous, the terror of the proximity, your late night invocation of a malignant tribunal, the left-handed spell that propelled you over the threshold. Then the unspooling of days in which you, the condemned or the elected, endure the magisterial delays, awaiting a sentence or an invitation to the castle, affable and satanic. To Franz Kafka. Through the pane darkly, we see the unstable alleyways and houses, the randomness of light, antlered shadow. Above the city, the corrosive clouds. Below the maleficent markings, the unlit attic, the dark-robed tribunal exhaling into the face of the accused, the stony law. Inconstant as the tomb, this universe of yours, where alone the lion and wolf are holy. For you, the star of salvation stands far too high. Were you to arrive, you would still stand in your way. The trial. Above the gray stone, no sun unbroken. Only the occasional threads bright in the branches. In the room painted with ash and salt over the amorphic corridor, the prehistoric forces of the court. Accused, you stand in the accrual of shadow. Your thoughts move toward absolution like small, pale moths. The ordained blade carves a rose in your heart. The uncolored world. Between you and the organisms of castle and court, a pitiless distance. Your vaporous days weighed against the adjacent world that forms pass through like blades. The unspoken osmosis that siphons the light into the hidden. An erasure of order, of the cosmos and colors that came before. A landscape absent its heavens and pigmentation. Navigation. Like Hamlet before you, cursing the river of soul, its current and proclivities of distance, its laws opposed to those governing the givenness of things. You say, I deceive without deception. Navigation by acts of wavering. In your diary you write, my boat is fragile, meaning made to a design that condemns it to dissolution in the hermetical sea. A shape of salvation. Like something sieved, the indefinite mist in which the hill is hidden. As if compelled into the visible by your insistence alone, the constellation of gray stone. The pilgrimage mischarted, you stand on the dark star. Unrecognized for now, the powers of the living, the villagers in the coarse weave of their complicity. The unreliable Messiah comes and goes. Unnoticed, the castle gates have closed and opened. The castle. The fractional battlements and spires, their atrophied shadows misrecognized against the complicit horizon. From a stone-colored cloud over the wreckage, the mendacious ray, no direction shown, a village bereft, bearing the marks of the departed. Ask the Messiah who comes and goes, which of the two of you stands accused? Between what is and is not inside your mind, the insidiously shifting line. Are your knuckles not raw with the knocking? Did you not know that on the Charles Bridge the wind has eaten the faces of the angels? Absent the clarifying eye, rumors about true things passed on by whispers behind ambiguous hands. The cave. Like Plato's fool, chained to the ground of his cave, the apprehension of fate, the motion of shadows over the rounding wall. So you, bound by the rope of your ruinous bid to know the duplicitous world. Conforming to the surfaces of earth and stone, the curvilinear mirrors that reflect the unstable nature of countenance, the ambiguous figure. Bent on establishing the true geometry, you interrogate every angle, measure every vector, map the convergence of the pair of parallel lines in the aberrant glass. Castle Garden. Like a personal myth, an image within us, the half-hidden castle as if petitioned into the visible. The wavering battlements, the evasive terrain. Fallen from an edge of the sun, the aureate light, the structure of stone suffused, an illusion of perpetuity. Beyond the insular walls, a geometry of shadows, colors of mud, dust, and scree. Unperceived, the portending of grief. Unstable in the way of sentient things, the apparatus of the castle. Within, the singular breathing of sleep. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura Ann. I have to confess that my knowledge of Kafka coming into this project was limited. I knew Metamorphosis, and I'd heard of the castle, and but I hadn't, certainly haven't done the studying that you have and with him. But I really enjoyed learning more about him, through your work while working on this book with you, and I found it just incredible how amazing, Paul Klee's work was embodied and just came to life through your poems. For those of you who don't know, each one of these poems is accompanied by an artwork by Paul Klee. And it's amazing. I don't know if you were sitting with the painting side by side as you were writing these, or how it all kind of magically just works together, totally simpatico. And it really, really adds another layer of meaning to all of this. And I have to say that the castle poem, when you get to this, what is it? About the clarifying eye, rumors about true things passed on by whispers behind ambiguous hands. If this doesn't speak to the present nature of things right now, I mean, this whole book does. The political implications of these poems is eerie, almost eerie, but it's really masterful. So I just want to thank you for sharing these poems with us today. It's been an enriching and expansive experience for sure. So thank you. Next up, we have Rick Rayburn, the author of Pink Tercettes, which takes the reader from the beauty of mountain dogwood's exquisite pink fall leaves to fun poems about hanging out with Clint Eastwood. Rick is a fourth generation Angelino who grew up in Altadena and went to UCLA in the 60s, where he met his wife, Mary Ann. After 2 years in the Air Force in Tucson, he then worked at the Coastal Commission as a redwood ecologist in Arcata for 15 years before moving his family to Sacramento, turning his focus to land preservation for California state parks. Upon retiring, he began writing and becoming active in the Sacramento literary community. He has two previous poetry books, Under the Overstory and Slack Tide, as well as poems in several journals, including a Van Gogh Royal Crown sonnet. And I have to commend you, Rick, on writing a crown of sonnets. That is no easy feat. It's my pleasure to welcome Rick Rayburn.
Oh, to everyone, thank you for coming. It's great to be here. I just got my shirt in yesterday. It matches my book, so I'm really happy, and I'm ready to go. So let's go to a poem. My wife and I went to Israel for a political and biblical tour after the Yom Kippur War, shortly after anyway. This first poem is a prose poem. It's called The Holy Land, 1977. Below a Bedouin black tent, goatskin tent, with a 15-foot TV antenna on a grassy hillside, we file in from the Israeli tour bus to a weathered restaurant. With views of ancient Capernaum's stonework across the Sea of Galilee, waiters serve plates of whole fish. The chef proclaims the fish is the very same fish that Jesus fed the multitudes a few hundred feet downshore. We gasp. We awe over the blackened perch-like fish, fins, tails, eyes, a museum piece on a bed of Pharaoh. I choke, pretty sure Jesus' species has been extirpated. We stuffed we file onto a white boat huddling against the Galilee wind. We putt into deep choppy water before the engine is cut. A lamb skull the size of a pomegranate drips wild honey. The boat tips as we gather for our leader, a Missouri pastor, to read a Jesus miracle from the Gospel of Matthew. He and his disciples got into the boat, and behold, there was a great storm, and the boat was covered with waves. The pastor leans against the pipe railing, suddenly grabs his pocket, yells, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Overboard, his wallet sings with the pendulum swings, fades, then gone. On a morning hike in Yosemite Valley, my wife and I stumbled onto something I will never forget. The title of the book comes from this poem, Dear Mountain Dogwood. Dear Mountain Dogwood, around the bend in Merced's tributary, you stun me. Alone, Fanning Creek boulders, your pink chevron leaves, undaunted before incense cedars, brown, chestnut brown. Like rose-colored light bulbs strung in disarray, or Anna's hummingbirds, scatter perched on laced twigs. Did I tell you in junior high when I picked out a pair of Bermuda shorts, my dad tossed them back, snapped, men in our family don't wear pink. Your leaves dangled peppermints from branchlets as the rose-fingered dawn, dabs of orange, almost salmon. Against the spruce, green forest that barely shadows from filtered light, your tercettes of leaf clusters will fade into November's ink. A mountain bluebird's warbled chir-chir. For now, silence, except the incense of spongy forest litter, the rhythmic morning drip, droning last night's drizzle, and your plain song of politeness. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to hear our poems. 6 of mine I'll read. I hope you find enjoyment. And I want to thank Shawn and Robert for their beauteous publication and responsive, wonderful process. And the book came out 3 weeks ahead of schedule. I am so very happy with the whole deal. Thank you, thank you. My next poem is a haibun. And it a haibun is some prose with a haiku, 3-line haiku at the end. And this is in memory of my wife, Mary Ann. It's taken from my second book of that title, which I'll give. Little background on the title, Slack Tide. There's a moment sailors call slack tide, when the tide is neither coming in nor going out, but perfectly still, when all is calm and peaceful. Slack tide, an epigraph. Dementia is a particularly long farewell to the self. The flicker with which life ends and excruciatingly slow. That's Nikki Gerard. They sit side by side on salt grass above the meandering tidal slough. Jeans cuffed, feet dangling in the ebb tide. A forest mouth rustles, nibbling rusting pickleweed in fall demise. Below the dim keet of a circling osprey moving down coast, that familiar dying plankton smell carried on sea breeze. Brackish slough waters empty to the bay. Along the shallow bank through cordgrass, the clapper rail moves, unnoticed, probing into the impasto dry muds. Lime green eelgrass, now barely submerged, waving downstream will be the rail's last search. Tidal waters emptying to the bay. A pink-billed marble godwit flutters in, wings pointing heavenward, lights on the last waters trickling over a clamshell mound. Feet stilled above the receding murky water, he is reminded of their third child's birth announcement. A chick between 4 sanderlings, new wings spread over open shell on bay silt. Dusty pink clouds passed, haloed by yellow gold brushstrokes of late afternoon. Her lone weary stride down dry tidal slough, wings dip, Godwick vanishes. The next poem is from the north coast, north of Humboldt Bay, up in the redwood areas, and a secluded rocky beach. It's called Sisyphus Symphony, north of Trinidad, California. The clap of cobbles scattered upslope by rhythmic sea surge, like the crack of croquet balls across Grandpa's green grass, drowning out seal barks every year, every day, hour to hour. Rocks tumble over the craggy beach, brattling up, clinking down, surge spraying our forearms, shaping stone into billiard-like balls that could clatter over green felt. At sea on my oak mantle, next to Walden Pond courts, 2 fist-size round rocks, gray-wacky and basalt, throttled for 30 years, still lick of brine. I guess all poets must write a sonnet and a daffodil poem. This is my daffodil poem I've written. It's called Her Daffodils. Twisting a green handled trowel against the early winter breeze, her knees sink into wet grass while bearing bulbs in cold clay before washing up for supper. Orange and yellow daffodils will pop up and pop up on top of unwavering stems, blazing a gray morning chill. 7 snip flowers, raised brass trumpets, will perform from a blossom urn on the dinner table. She will fold a handful of tired leaves, wrap them with spent stems to replenish depleted bulbs, laying them down under her roses. Years later, he will place a vase of daffodils next to the plastic box filled with her ashes, waiting on the dresser. I grew up in Altadena. Following the fires last year, many childhood remembrances were shared with old friends scattered across the country. This poem is called The JR. Into swirling charcoal winds and orange flashes, the fire truck and air horn blast up Lake Avenue. Uncertain young men clutching the tiller, firefighters in yellow jackets on residential streets, bullhorning, evacuate, evacuate now. A 12-hour onslaught. Surviving deodars cast long shadows across half of Altadena's homes, churches, schools, artist and dance studios. In ashes, charred brick, concrete, buckled steel. Unraveling memories. Shoving in the JR coffee shop, licking our lips, chapped by the dry Santa Ana winds. Inside a wall of windows, 10 tuck and roll booths with narrow tables just right for touching knee to knee, where junior high schoolers fell in love, where boys asked girls to go steady, necking St. Christopher medals. The aroma of leather seats, coffee, bacon, tobacco, women's perfume, blends with chatter and a malt blender's bellow. A waitress in pink and white takes our order. 2 cherry Cokes with straws and large fries, please. We talk with girls about KFWB's Top 40, Frankie Avalon, 77 Sunset Strip, swirling salty fries through ketchup and blue cheese dressing. I had my first onion ring here. Jeannie slides into our booth with her flavor straw, a cardboard laced with chocolate concealed inside. We suck hard, barely getting flavored milk, but love, sharing again and again that wet-lipped straw. My last poem, and my 3 kiddos were born in Arcata on Humboldt Bay in north coast of California. This takes place. The poem is The Freshly Painted Porch at 15th and I. We stomp snails, quiet squashers, hard-shell crackers, crawling with hope across lawns, October dew. My 3-year-old has pretty good aim. Under his red rain boots, they are flat-ass goners. Halloween night, he wears the boots with his mom's made clown suit, a plastic orange cheeky mask, mucousy eyes, red nose. His sister, a coat-hangered haloed angel. We 4 candy chatter down the sidewalk. They climb the steps of a mail-order bungalow. The old gruff man slips backyard apples into their plastic pumpkins. Back on the sidewalk, our clown spins, clomps back up the stairs, and in the blink, one red boot plasters Arcata's mightiest snail deep into the staring man's porch. To each of you, thank you for coming.
Oh, Rick, that was wonderful. And I enjoy this book so much. It takes me on a full journey of emotions. You have the beautiful poems about your wife, you have these exquisite homages to nature, and then you have these just delightful stories. You're such a wonderful storyteller through your verse. and really wonderful use of forms with the guzzles, the high-bin. I'm a big fan of writing high-bin myself. The modern duplex that you have in there, it really complements the vast array of topics that you cover in this book. And every time we turn the page, we get something to experience something new. So it's really a treat. But I have to say, I love the fact that you remember where you first had your very first onion ring. I mean, that's just such a delicious detail. I just love that. And the book is full of those. So well done. Really enjoyed your reading today and your personality. And I have to say, it takes a real man to wear pink. All right. So thanks so much for sharing these poems and delightful stories with us today. There you go. I love it. Our next featured poet is Patricia Cannon, the author of Wild Heart, which combines her two passions, photography and poetry. Patricia Cannon has been a registered nurse at UCSF since 2001. Throughout her career, she has gained experience in various areas, including cardiac critical care, neurointensive care, hematology oncology, and school nursing. Currently, she is focused on research. Outside of her professional life, Patricia is passionate about her faith, photography, and the written word in all its forms. Please welcome Patricia Cannon.
So I'd like to thank everyone being here today. It really means a lot to all of us. And I also want to thank Robert and Shawn for presenting my work so beautifully. I really appreciate it. So thank you. The cover photo here is dedicated to my friend Pia, and it's titled Beauty Breaking Through. And it's my belief that spiritual beauty always breaks through. So the first poem I'd like to share is dedicated to my mother. And if you have the book, it's on page 11, and it's called Wild Heart. It was a Thursday when I saw a row of what resembled tombstones suddenly appear on the hospital monitor hovering above your bed, and heard a voice like thunder, code blue, 10 long, room 1032. The alarm incited the sound of a medical team stampede until they stormed into your room, pressed the defibrillator paddles against your chest, and shocked your wild heart until it beat into a lockstep rhythm again. Days earlier, the surgeon had cracked you open at the space that lies between your breasts, performed a quadruple coronary bypass, and then stapled you back together. But the distance between the sound of ambulance sirens rushing towards you would shorten into one final sigh when I signed the DNR and DNI, and your life force disappeared into a flat line. You didn't want a memorial service because you said being inside a church always made you cry, nor did you want to be buried in one place under someone's foot. So I gave your ashes to the ocean, where the waves carried you far away from judgment, far away from shame. When I drive across the Golden Gate Bridge, I will sometimes see on my left a Claude Monet sunrise, and on my right an Ansel Adams coastline. Mother, the city views are like my memories of you. They move between impressions and realities that I have sewn together into a multicolored shawl that I keep tightly wrapped around me as I move straight ahead on the road to a new life. And so the photo that I took that accompanies this poem, this is not ekphrastic poetry, but it's of a young woman looking at the Golden Gate Bridge from Vista Point. And the first photo is of a water puddle that looked like the shape of a heart, and you can see the clouds reflected in the water and also the leaves. So the next piece is a prose poem that I want to thank Marcia for helping me with the editing of it. She's unable to make it here today. It's called The Homeless Man and the Baby Shoe. And if you have your book, it's on page 18. And basically, this prose piece touches on the unhoused community in San Francisco, the challenges faced by those in the healthcare professions, and also it alludes to Jesus's parable, reminding us to see the humanity in all people and what it really means to be a spiritual person. It's the homeless man and the baby shoe. During my afternoon walk, I see a homeless man in what appears to be a deep slumber, most likely induced by some addictive substance. His white t-shirt is pulled halfway up his chest, revealing a black circle made by a permanent marker on the side of his lower back. I realize that he must have been in the hospital, and one of the doctors noticed a rash, so they circled the area to monitor for shingles. I feel as if I'm walking by a crime scene, like the two so-called religious people who passed by the injured man in Jesus's parable about the Good Samaritan. I check that he's breathing by observing his chest rise and fall before I continue down the street. Guilt and helplessness weigh heavy upon my shoulders as I turn the corner. Then I find a little blue knit baby shoe on the ground. A man waiting at a bus stop glances at my scrubs and says through his mask, "Thank you for your service." I meet his eyes and thank him for his sentiments. His kind words are still fresh in my mind as I return to work. But I can't help but think of how I stepped around that man without shelter. His body lay sprawled on the cement. I wonder what led him to such a solitary and desperate place. I also think of two mothers, one who lost a shoe and the other who lost her son. And this poem is accompanied by a photo that I dedicated to April Jennison. These boots are her children's boots. They're grown now, but I just love this photo. So the next poem is in the same vein, and it is found, let's see, it's found on page 16. And this photo that I took is a starry lamp in Larkspur, California. And this photo is dedicated to Sandra. She is an illuminator in her field. She's helped many people deal with PTSD, including myself. On a city street, a woman sits on a bench surrounded by plastic shopping bags positioned like a constellation. As she spirals into a crazed babble with passers-by, I see a flash of light in her eyes, like two shooting stars burning bright, then disappearing in the night sky. The next poem is for a dear person to me. It's for Inger, and her poem can be found on page 22. And it is accompanied by this photo that I also dedicated to her of daisies, which are her favorite flower, breaking through the cement. And we've all seen this. And to me, it symbolizes beauty, resilience, and endurance, qualities that she has. Inger's table. Generations unearthed treasures of gold around this wooden aisle, proverbs and parables shared over plates of lasagna. We departed with faces as hard as flint and sailed into a babbling sea, certain that our hearts would bloom amid broken stars and a blackened moon. The next poem is dedicated to my friend Dupé. And let me find it here. So we know that birds of paradise, the flower, originated in Africa. And so when we walk down a city street, we see these beautiful things that originated elsewhere. And so it reminds me to really appreciate various cultures. Diversity can be a very beautiful thing. is a very beautiful thing. Birds of paradise for Dupé thrive by a sidewalk. They lift their tufted heads high amid passers-by. The next poem is on page 52, and it's dedicated to Maria, who, as a child, she lived in Brooklyn, and from the years of 1948 through 1959, she had to play on her fire escape because it was unsafe to play outside. And I actually came from the projects. I didn't have that similar experience, but I did go on the fire escape quite a bit because it reflected a lot of what Emily Dickinson said about drawing close to God. And it also reminds me of a beautiful verse in Romans that we can see as invisible qualities by the things he's created. And so it's called Outside Her Window for Maria. And it is accompanied by this photo that's also dedicated to her. We see a shadow of a child in the braids looking longingly into a bakery store window. Outside her window, the picture of Jesus stares at the little girl with eyes that seem to bleed, while her grandmother sings and brushes her hair with coconut oil. At Sunday school, she recites by rote, "The Lord is my shepherd," until the teacher gives her sheets of paper and instruct her to connect the dots until Jesus appeared. He always does on paper. But when she stands on the fire escape outside her window, her words fall apart under the stars and the night sky's untraceable black. So the next poem is called Montenegro, and it's dedicated to my dear friends, Angela and Renee. And also this photo that I took of ballet slippers for my friend Janet, who loves the ballet. Montenegro for Angela and Renee. The sun rests its tired head on the mountainous curves of Montenegro. Its bronzed heart aims arrows of yearning at the Adriatic Sea. The dancer of Budva pleads with the wind to return her sailor to her side, but her words break against the rocks while onlookers throw invisible flowers at her feet. This local legend about loyal love stirs something within me, but it's too much for me to bear. So I pluck mementos like low-hanging fruit at tourist stands. When my friend says Montenegro doesn't hide its light, I see her, the woman who dances at the seaside with her outstretched arm reaching toward the expanse. As I sail away, she calls out to me over many waters and inspires me to step out of the shadows and into a whole-souled life. And the last poem I would like to read is dedicated to Patrick and Maria. They both are doctors. They gave me my first stethoscope. They really helped me through nursing school. And I really enjoyed caring for their children who are now grown. And I think one is actually going to medical school now. On being a nurse for Patrick and Maria. Today is like any other day in a world caught in the clutches of COVID-19. Clad in mask and scrubs, I climb the garage stairs to the hospital where hope and hands grope, searching for treatments for patients adrift in the murky sea of morbidity. My heart and breath acclimates from floor to floor as the stark blue walls clash with the grim gray cement beneath my feet. My mind swims through 20 years of images of those who waited in this space beyond our current reach. I make it up to the top floor once more, ready to work. As I open the glass door to the Clinical Research Center, a timeless proverb surfaces from my memory to greet me. A true nurse can be a true friend, born for times of distress. So I squeeze on those gloves worn of care and comfort, like many in my profession have done before and will continue to do so the next time tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Oh, Patty, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional. That last poem really got to me because it reminded me of a very special nurse that took care of my husband 3 years ago. So, oh gosh, it's bless you and bless all the nurses. This book is, well, you titled it Wild Heart. But honestly, I think we could just call it Heart because it's just such a beautiful tribute to the people in your life, people that you've met, the people that you haven't met. You just have such a wonderful way about bringing it all to life, pairing these very heartfelt stories and tributes and pairing them with your photos. And I love the fact that it's not ekphrastic, that it wasn't all planned out. You didn't like write a poem and then go take a picture. There's just this wonderful serendipitous conversation between the images and the poems. And I think that's really lovely. And also the way you dedicate almost all the poems or almost all the images to someone, I think is just such a really lovely gesture because I mean, doesn't everybody want to have a poem dedicated to them? I think that's just splendid. So I really enjoyed your reading today. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us.
Oh, thank you. And I want to thank everybody being here today. And all the people that are in the book are, to me, they're illuminators, all of them. So thank you.
As are you, as are you. Oh, our final reader today is Celeste Colasurdo, who is reading on behalf of her late twin sister, Christine. The book, There Is Always a Volcano Before You, is a love letter to the Cascade Range in Mount St. Helens. Christine, who passed away in 2021, lived at Spirit Lake before the eruption of Mount St. Helens. She taught writing and calligraphy at the Multnomah Art Center and was a founding member of the Mount St. Helens Institute. Christine's poems have appeared in Windfall, Verse Weavers, Medical Literary Messenger, the University of Portland Magazine, and Denver Quarterly Review, among others. Christine was also a visual artist and calligrapher. In fact, we were able to use a replica of Christine's calligraphy for the book cover, which was very special. Please welcome Christine's twin sister, Celeste Colasurdo.
Thank you, Shawn. There's a photo of Christine in the book. For those of you who have it, it's in the back about the author. And I'm really privileged to be here, and I'm really grateful to Shawn and to Robert and to my sister Marita and also to Carl Roars. I'd like to talk a little bit about the book to begin with. Christine died shortly after she told me she had 2 manuscripts of poetry, and I am now a twinless twin. So publishing this book took, I think, extra work that normally wouldn't happen for both a publisher and for myself. So I just am really grateful that Shawn was able to help me through that process. Christine had picked out this painting by Barbara Stafford Wilson called Sleep and Wait Again. And so I had this, I knew I wanted that for the cover, but because she had chemotherapy, she was a calligrapher, but she wasn't able to actually letter the title of her book. And Christine had lettered poetry books by Wendell Berry and done his titles. So I reached out to a colleague, a dear friend of Christine's, Carl Roars in Santa Cruz, and asked him to do the calligraphy, but he had a better idea, which was to actually harvest these letters from other pieces of Christine's work. He had to do work on them. He had to clean them up. He used Photoshop, and he was able to get Christine's title in Christine's hand. So I feel that Robert also helped very much to get the final design and everything done. And Robert also enhanced these old photographs with restoration and made the photographs that are in the book really come alive again. So thank you both Robert, Shawn, Carl, and my sister Marita, who held my hand through the whole process. The other thing about the title that I want to talk about is There is always a volcano before you. You might think, wait, no, I'm not on the west coast of the United States, because we all know everybody on the west coast of the United States is on the Pacific Ring of Fire. So you definitely literally have a volcano before you. Those of you who are not, who might be joining from other parts of the world, maybe it's metaphorical, like we do have these eruptions that happen in our lives that turn our landscapes upside down. And I hope that if you get the book and you read the book, you can discover that loss, resilience, and rediscovery and rebirth that happens in the human experience. I also want to mention that there are flyleaves that have stories of from many places and many people. So do not miss that, because those are stories of when the volcano erupted, exactly who was doing what, where, and really brings back the memory of 1980, 8:32 a.m. in the morning. Christine has another book on Mount St. Helens called Return to Spirit Lake. This book is organized geographically in different areas of the eruption, the blast zone, the lake basin, the pumice plain. This book is ordered chronologically, where we go through the eruption with her and the post-eruption. So there were 4 sections of the book: pre-eruption and eruption, post-eruption, and Anthropocene. Anthropocene is the term that is given to this time that we're living right now, which is when human activity has impacted the planet. We all know about climate change. And there is a certain loss, it's called solastalgia, for people who are grieving the loss of landscapes due to climate change. I'm going to begin pre-eruption as she began, and I'd like to read the poem that Shawn selected for the website for the poetry box. It's called Journey to the Center of Your Breath. And I just need to explain that Christine and I, we were 7 years old when we first went to Spirit Lake, and it always felt more like home to us than growing up in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. We always wanted to be at the mountain. We dreamed of it, did art, wrote about it, everything. We were pretty much obsessed. And because of that, Christine really developed what I would call a place-based identity. She felt that Mount St. Helens was her life's work. Journey to the center of your breath. Every day the mountain looms. It is a tremendous mountain of rock and ice, of summer storms and summits knocked by clouds, of glaciers begun long ago and still carving canyons. So you journey to that mountain. Every day you walk the river to its base, hike its timberline, touch its subalpine flowers, the ones highest up near the glaciers, where it seems nothing could survive. Yet each summer they bloom with abandon. And all the while, as you struggle against the limits of your body, every exhaltation whistles down those canyons, the mountain's ribs, which are your own. I wish I could read a poem from Eruption, but there is only one, and it is very long. So if you are able to attend one of my in-person readings, I promise you I will read that one. It is a gorgeous poem and very emotional, but I'm going to skip the Eruption. Everybody take a breath. We made it through, and we're going to get to post-eruption. Post-eruption features a photograph of Christine's. And this is a tree that she photographed for over 20 years. She hiked the Harmony Trail down to the lake basin like a pilgrim. And so I have over 20 years of photos of that little tree coming back after the eruption. The poem that I'm going to read, there are quite a few post-eruption, and I am going to read one that is dedicated to Pearly Everlasting. Pearly Everlasting was a homecoming for Christine. We hiked so many areas around Spirit Lake and the backcountry and the mountain after it erupted. And this little wildflower was something that we both remembered. It was on the cover of the first edition of her book, Return to Spirit Lake, a photograph that I took. We loved Pearly Everlasting before the eruption because it grew everywhere. And even though we weren't supposed to pick them, we did because they lasted. These are Pearly Everlasting that I picked in the summer, and I still have them in November. So there could be a little bit of Spirit Lake with us all during the year. Pearly Everlasting. I thought to thatch my heart with you, but you grow in wild, in wasted places, you button-faced, sun-faced, cloud-bright weed. Always wilder than gardeners want you, taking on mountains as well as valleys, wandering the globe like a ghost white pilgrim, settling down anywhere with thousands of seeds. You're white as breath on hard frost mornings. Your leaves grow fur to keep from freezing. You bloom in sun as well as shade. Where do you not put down your progeny? You're rough and riotous beyond the human. I thought to tame you in my garden. Instead, it's you who wild me. Okay, we have made it through the eruption. We're now going to be at Anthropocene. And Anthropocene are the realizations that Christine had rediscovering Spirit Lake and the blast zone. I can remember this one drive and hike we did where we saw this one area. We thought it was the blast zone, but it was actually clear cutting and all the trees were gone. So there were certain human caused things that happened to that landscape that we had not anticipated. This poem is called Hiking the Backcountry, and I'd like to thank everybody who's staying with us as we're going over time. I just have to read this poem and one more, and thanks again for listening. Hiking the Backcountry. This begins with a quote by Nancy Wynn Newhall. The wilderness holds answers to more questions than we have yet learned to ask. The trail begins in ambivalence. Would I trade these young firs for the massive ones I knew as a child? If I could hike back through time, would I choose the old forest? A leafcutter bee lands on a false dandelion. Weeds grow well at the trailhead, city weeds in Lawatlaka's wilderness. The false dandelion says, I walk a wounded landscape. Wounded place, wounded time. All landscapes are damaged, but this landscape's damage is my own. As victims, we're kin. The wildness I walk is the mountains, as well as mine and yours, broken. A red elderberry burgeoning trailside in leafy long-branched vigor tells me destruction is an opening. Where the opening leads cannot be seen by the destroyer sees so little. The elderberry knows a destroyed place, asks to be healed. Its seedling took root as part of the pendulum of nature that demands that healing. That is why a destroyed place is hallowed ground. Do not ask a destroyed place its past. Ask, how is it healing? If I have learned anything walking for decades this woundedness, it is that damage is one kind of beauty, a painful crucible of the sacred. That is why anyone might come here where a forest forces itself out of ash and ask to be healed. Here's a huckleberry. Huckleberries used to ripen in late August. Now they ripen in July. The forest used to stay moist through August. Now it dries out in July. Wildflowers bloom weeks before they used to. This backcountry evolves, like the rest of the world, in a vague wave of warming. I, like you, am a Homo sapiens. How strangely human to love a place you've damaged just by being alive. Ah, but also how strangely human to be damaged by a place one loves. Mountains and love, same thing. Damage and volcanoes. Same thing. And so appear the scars of the living. Damage individuates. The noble fir's trunk stands gashed. The junco lacks a tail feather but still flies. The pocket gopher's back boasts a scarred talon strike. In each far out place there is listening. The listening arises out of damage. If there is any place on earth that can adapt, it is this place that has made damage its way of life. The trail climbs in the cool air. I have a long way yet. As I hike, I ask out loud, rooted firs, what should I do? Migrating birds, how should I live? Meanwhile, the northwestern salamander slips into a damp nook and watches for what comes. Okay, here's the last poem, and it's short. Thank you very much for staying with me. It's called All Things, which is a reference to a Roman proverb that Christine discovered. Omnia mutantur nos et mutamur in illis. All things change, and we change with them. I'm going to read this one in a David White style, where I'm going to repeat because it's very short and it's very layered. What's born and breathes must find a way to thread through chaos heaving. What's born and breathes must find a way to thread through chaos heaving. What rests beside the river once must shift towards sea achieving. What rests beside the river once must shift towards sea achieving. What flies from tree to field at last must find its home in leaving. What flies from tree to field at last must find its home in leaving. Thank you so much. And just know that I got kicked out of the library, so I'm actually on the street here with a beautiful sunset. Thanks again.
I was wondering where you were, Celeste. I thought wasn't she inside before when we started? Oh, wow. Well, thanks for being flexible and keeping the show going. That's great. You know, this was just what a special book this is. What a special reading this is, and you really, you're really keeping your sister alive by sharing this book and these poems. You know, when you first approached me about this project, I was just so moved by your dedication to make this her last wish come true, you know, to have this book published. You know, and as a mother of twins, of course, it was even extra special. So when you say twinless twin, it just breaks my heart every time. You know, you know, I grew up in the Midwest, and I remember the eruption. You know, I was in school. I was in high school in class, and I remember when it happened, our teachers, you know, the news came through, and they talked about it in Missouri, you know, as it was happening. It was such a big deal. And then of course coming out here and learning more about it, it's really, really quite something. And I think this book is not only a tribute to your sister, but such a testament to how our earth and the human spirit endure. So, and you sharing this as an embodiment of that as well. So thank you so much for this today, Celeste. It was very, very special. Let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. I'd like to thank our 4 talented featured readers, Laura Ann Reed, Rick Rayburn, Patricia Cannon, and Celeste Colasurdo. And thank you, our audience, for supporting our authors and joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. You know, with everything going on in the world these days, it's so nice to gather here in our Zoom room and share this art form we love. How lucky we are to be able to do this. We are taking a break for the holidays, but we'll be back for a new show on Saturday, January 10th, where our featured poets will be Katie Vallejo, Mike Schneider, Fred Zerm, and Kristen Rodell. And to keep up to date on our shows as well as submission opportunities, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. There's a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage at thepoetrybox.com. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I hope the rest of your year is filled with an abundance of joy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you to all of you.
Beautiful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Don't tell me you're not famous for being there.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.